All right, here we go. Week one, folks. Appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. It's always good to talk the game we all love, but especially this week. And we are loaded up with ridiculous content. So be locked in right here and across the network here at the Voice of College Football. The schedule, again, ridiculous. Today, we launch the Alabama show with our guy Jackson of the Jacksonian. That's on the Alabama channel, the SEC channel. That is at 6 p.m. Eastern time tonight. We believe that the team we put together there, you will enjoy. Again, that's going to be at 6 p.m. Eastern time, Alabama and the SEC channel. Crimson Tide live, 7 o'clock Eastern time, Texas Live. Matt Miller and the Texas show on the Texas channel, as has been running for about 40 or 50 weeks. 8 p.m. Eastern time, we've got a treat for you. Monday this week, Wednesday the rest of the season, Brian Driscoll, Irish Breakdown, and myself, Notre Dame Live. We've got a Notre Dame live show every week with Brian Driscoll, the best. There we go. We've got a Texas A&M media contributor coming on. Guess what? Texas A&M Notre Dame on Saturday night might be the game of the week. The USC show is coming up at 10 p.m. Eastern time. And of course, that's Matt, that's Tim, that's myself, but it's Matt Moscona from ESPN Radio repping LSU. And of course, that's another huge game. And we've got another big blowout special. And not to get ahead of ourselves too much, we've got to get together on Wednesday night. Georgia, Clemson, contributors from both sides. I will mediate and keep it rational and reasonable. That's what I do here at the Voice of College Football. Speaking of which, Florida State is the worst program in the history of college football. I'll get to that in just a second. And of course, we'll talk about week one. Yes, Florida State, if you have not been engaged in social media over the weekend since losing to Georgia Tech, Florida State is they're officially the worst program in the history of college football. It's just a complete embarrassment what's going on in Tallahassee by way of Dublin, Ireland. Yes, it should be obvious to all of us that this program has just hit the rails in the span of one football game. We'll get to that. Let's get to some calls. We've got our buddy JR on the line. JR, what's going on?
Not much. How are you, Mark?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well. I can't say too much about Florida State. Ohio State did lose a recruit to Georgia Tech about a week or two ago. So if Florida State's losing on the field and Ohio State's losing on the recruiting front, I can't say too much there.
Okay. I'm not making the connection myself, but that's fine.
There was an offensive lineman.
Oh, I know exactly who you're talking about, but
yeah. Well, Mark, we had some interesting news this weekend. You want to talk about that, or you want to talk about football?
Interesting news this weekend.
The notice of allegations.
Oh, whoa. Yes. We'll let our Michigan friends handle that. That's another thing that I missed in running down the schedule. They're going live on the Michigan channel at some point. I can't tell you when.
I saw 8. It was either 6 or 8.
8 o'clock tonight?
So,
okay. So be on the Michigan channel tonight. Whenever the show is, we will update our schedules on that. All right. Hit us, JR.
Yeah, I think it's just interesting the allegations coming out with the timing that they are, and right before the Netflix documentary, right before the season. I was saying on my Big Ten show last night, we didn't even really talk about it because I was like, I just want to talk about football. I didn't want to talk about this and all the drama behind it. It's nice, like off-season stuff to get everybody riled up. But the game I'm most interested in talking about right now is Minnesota, North Carolina. Did you see the cover or the spread on that changed yesterday?
I did not check the spread. I will be locked in on that pretty soon because we will be, of course, predicting the game. But I don't even recall from the offseason what the spread is. I would guess North Carolina might be a 3 or 4 point favorite.
Yeah, so it started out with, at least the first time I saw it, was Minnesota was 1.5 favorite, And then now North Carolina, it switched yesterday, sometime afternoon. It switched to North Carolina being a 1.5 favorite.
Yeah, that's a massive swing without any news.
There's some speculation. We had a Minnesota guy on our podcast last night. There's some speculation that Daniel Jackson, the wide receiver at Minnesota, or Darius Taylor, the running back everybody's excited about, he had a really good 4 or 5 game stretch last year
Yep.
before he got injured. There's some speculation those guys might be hurt. So I feel like it's either the money coming in or one of those two guys might not be expected to play.
Yeah, we hear from our betting guy, Steve Merrill, on a regular basis that if the public is making some kind of surge, then they usually don't know what they're talking about. They're usually wrong. So go the other way. But yeah, that would be pretty significant. One of those guys, not so much. It's usually just a quarterback, or you've got to be an all-time type Aaron Donald kind of player other than a quarterback position to sway a line. But yeah, if you put those two guys together, although Minnesota's been about as good as anybody in college football over the last 4 or 5 years of just bringing tailbacks off the bench and going like 4 or 5 deep, and it doesn't seem to matter. But that may not be the case this year.
Yeah, I think the quarterback is definitely the one that if that one happens, that normally moves the line more. I tend to believe it's probably money related. PJ Fleck keeps it so tight with information coming out of there. I can't imagine they would figure something out and the public doesn't know about it, or Minnesota writers wouldn't come out with it and say something about that. I do want to get your thoughts really fast, and then I'll head out on Max Brosmer, the quarterback coming in from FCS, passing yard leader last year, coming to Minnesota. We talk a lot about players making the transition from, G5 to Power 5 and FCS to Power 5. What do you think that transition is like for a quarterback making it from FCS all the way up to, not just G5, but Power 4? Minnesota's going to be playing a lot of good teams this year.
So I got to think that the first thing that comes to mind is that there's an adjustment because the typical cornerback closing window, across just not the cornerback position, but that's a one-on-one matchup type situation. But as you read zones and you read coverages, it becomes more complex than that, than just, okay, you got a wide out doing a square out and you're trying to beat the quarterback to the sideline. That's an isolated one-on-one play. But, I think, with the complexity of, we won't even go with the defensive line. We'll just go with the coverages in the secondary, that the anticipation has to be better. The anticipation and the decision-making has to be better because the windows close quicker, and the coverage is just going to be better on a regular basis, although your players have upgraded as well. But I got to think that the gap is closed as opposed to coming from a top FCS program.
Yeah, I mean, I think the speed of the defenders and stuff like that impacts the windows they're throwing into and having to adjust to that. I would hope that, they've done enough in the fall practice leading up to the season to try to get him more used to that game speed and doing those things. Joe Rossi coming in for Michigan State from Minnesota is really interesting. I'm interested to see what this Minnesota defense looks like without him. He was there for such a long time, like
Yep.
almost 10 years, I think. I think he came over with PJ Fleck at the very beginning when he came from Western Michigan. So it's going to be a
PJ
little bit different.
replaced Rob Smith
Oh,
with
that's right.
Rossi when they were giving up 50 points a game the first season. And then Rossi came in, they improved immediately and won like 4 or 5 straight, went to a bowl game, PJ's first year. Yep.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot he was on the staff, but he wasn't the defensive coordinator when he first came in. So yeah, I'm really interested in that. Of course, Rutgers and Illinois, they're playing too, but it's Howard and Eastern Illinois, so it's not going to be probably the most exciting thing in the world. But hey, it's football. I'm just glad it's back.
I don't know. The bottom of the Big Ten will give us a surprise or two. They typically do. If not just a scare, a flat out, just embarrassing upset. Give me the collection of Illinois, Purdue, Northwestern, pretty much those three. Indiana will throw them into the basket, even though I can't remember an embarrassing loss out of Indiana. They could have easily
They
had one
almost lost
last
to
year
Akron
because
last year.
Akron missed a field
Yeah.
goal that would have beaten them, but they escaped. But the other three have a pretty good collection of FCS and MAC losses over the last 10 or 15 years.
Yeah, well, it was just Purdue last year lost to Fresno State, I think it was, but
That
Fresno
I can
State.
forgive.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't think they have their coach this year from last year, so
No.
I don't know if they'll have the same fortune. Hey, last thing, because I just thought about it. Rutgers is favored by 35.5. Can you ever recall a time where Rutgers was favored by more than 30 points over it?
No. That might be a first ever.
This is
Who are they playing? Wagner? Howard?
Howard.
Howard. They've got Howard.
Who almost
Somebody
beat
else.
Northwestern last year.
Yeah. Yeah. If we would have known last year at the end of the year, okay, where'd that come from? Northwestern is going to beat Howard or Wagner. I'm getting them mixed up again. Howard, Wagner, 24-21. We would have thought, okay, well, yeah, they're going to go 1-11 like we thought. But no, they played well against everybody else. Yep.
I was gonna say if Northwestern had dropped that game to Howard and they had still managed to go 7-5 or 6-6 or something like that, that'd have been real embarrassing for any Big Ten team that lost to them, considering they lost to Howard earlier. But yeah. So anyway, just wanted to touch on that stuff, and I'll let you go on with your show. And if you have any other callers, get to them. Thanks, Mark.
So JR, we're going to see you after the Buckeyes game on Saturday, correct?
Yes. Me
Awesome.
and Mike will be there.
JR and Mike, after Ohio State Akron, play a thriller on Saturday afternoon. That's a 3:30 game, correct?
Yes. On
3:30.
CBS.
CBS. Maybe Garrett Danielson will kind of come to full realization. What happened to my broadcasting career? I'm doing Ohio State and Akron. What happened to my career? But anyway, they are well compensated, so let's not feel bad for them. But yeah, 3:30. And then after the game, join JR and Mike of Best Damn Media on the Buckeyes coverage after the ball game. All right, JR, good to see you. Thanks for stopping by.
Good to see you. Have a good one.
You too. All right, we keep it rolling here at the Voice of College Football, and JR's got a ton of great talent. This is what's the issue with the 10 a.m. Eastern Time show. It's the voice and the diction has not come together yet. You were the first people that I'm talking to this morning, so the mouth is just warming up for all of you to hear. All right, we'll keep it going here at the Voice of College Football. I guess nobody wants to hear my rant against Florida State, but we want to go to the callers here. We got Dominic lined up. Dominic, what's going on?
Not much, Mark, and college football is finally back. It's my favorite time every single year. I just love college football. I'm getting into it more and more as the years go by, and I'm starting to get into it more now, so yeah. But there is one game in particular I wanted to touch on that you and JR just talked about. That's the North Carolina-Minnesota game.
Yeah.
And as I checked just now, UNC is favored to win by 1.5. And looking at the official depth chart for UNC, who's coached by Mac Brown, by the way, they got Max Johnson as their quarterback, according to their depth chart.
They do?
And honestly, he's a solid QB, if you ask me. You know, he's been very good. I know UNC lost Drake May to the Patriots in the draft, but Mac Johnson, I feel like, is going to step it up a notch or two for UNC, especially on that offense. What do you think?
I think that they've downgraded a quarterback. I think that's pretty obvious, but Max Johnson is one of the toughest quarterbacks in college football, if nothing else. I don't know that I've seen a quarterback over the last 3 or 4 years take more shots than Max Johnson and get off the deck and keep coming. So he's of course the son of an excellent NFL quarterback who won a Super Bowl. So there is that development that took place even before he hit high school and college. So it's in his blood. It's in his DNA. We don't get to see too many lefties. And yeah, he's a good quarterback. Max Johnson is a good quarterback. He is a better quarterback than most people would want to believe that he is, but he's not Drake May. He's
Yeah, I
immobile
honestly,
for one thing.
yeah, one thing he is a mobile QB. Now from Minnesota, who
Immobile.
is coached by PJ Fleck. PJ Fleck is the coach for Minnesota. They got Max Brosmer as their QB, who I think is just as good as Max Johnson, in my opinion. I think he'll do
Based on
great for
what?
them.
What are you basing that on? I'm just curious. I'm not
Recep-
arguing with
reception.
you.
I know, like passes thrown for touchdowns and stuff like that. That's where I'm getting at.
Who is Max Johnson throwing his touchdowns against, and who is Max Brosmer throwing his touchdowns against?
Mm.
Just in general. I'm not talking about like specific cornerbacks. I'm talking about who have they generally been playing against?
Now, see, that's where you got me crossed up a little bit
Okay.
there, Mark.
Max Johnson has played his career at Texas A&M and LSU. So he's
Yeah,
played in the
LSU.
best conference in college football. And so his statistics are a little bit more valid than Max Brosmer's, who's played in FCS football. So Max Brosmer has been playing the roughly 150th best team in the country every week. And Max Johnson has been playing, the 5th best team, the 10th best team, the 15th best team. So I don't know. Max Brosmer might turn out to be much better than Max Johnson. Minnesota obviously paved the way for him. I don't know what happened with the quarterback situation at Minnesota where Ethan Kalkumanis, who was the clear-cut starter, we've rarely seen this, a clear-cut starter at a program leave, and then he goes to Rutgers, who goes to a bowl game for the first time in forever and wins a bowl game for the first time in a decade and kicks their quarterback out. And so then PJ Fleck needs a quarterback unless there was a conversation between PJ Fleck and Ethan Kalkumanis to basically say, hey, we're going to be on the market for a quarterback. You're not getting the job done. That might have been the case as well. But Max Brosmer, based on what I understand, is a slight upgrade at quarterback for Minnesota over Kalkumanis. But of course, he's played against somewhat inferior competition.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there, Mark. Slight upgrade there. I don't know what PJ Fleck was doing with that decision. Like, I don't know what the heck he was thinking. But, yeah, that's pretty much it, Mark. Thanks for the time. Appreciate it. Have a good day.
Appreciate you being here, Dominic.
Thank you.
All right, we will keep it rolling here at the Voice of College Football. And in the scurrying around this morning of putting this together, I was texting way too many people that I could have waited a few hours to text, but there were just some conversations that had to be had at some point, and wanted to get those out of the way. Didn't need to get those out of the way, wanted to get those out of the way, and didn't really prep the show too well here because, of course, when things are new, it becomes difficult for me to incorporate that into the habit. So we will do that right now because we certainly want to provide our little display that we credit Justin Adams for delivering for us here at the Voice of College Football. So this is nice out of Justin Adams. He is responsible for the background design there. The set design we are still tweaking, still working on. The blue LEDs on the wall turn purple. Don't like that. But that's blue, actually. That's blue. Doesn't look blue to me. All right, let's keep it rolling here at the Voice of College Football. We got our buddy Chris on the line. I'm trying to bring him in, but for some reason, it's not coming in. Chris, are you with us?
Yes.
Oh, you are. Wonder
Yes.
why your window's not popping up here.
I don't know either, Mark.
That's
I'm sorry.
strange.
No, you're fine. Oh,
how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. I'm going to do my best to bring your window up here, but keep going.
Did you catch the game between Nevada and Southern Methodist? Do you have any thoughts about that game?
I wish I had caught it from start to finish. I'm in the midst of having to make a decision about streaming and cable and all that business. I've been in a new place for a few months, and I really can survive without cable and streaming until football season gets here. And I'm wanting to do things last minute, so I've yet to decide on that. So anyway, I found it online in the fourth quarter, and I watched a little bit, but we did a call-in show that cut right into the fourth quarter. So I saw about 5 or 10 minutes, but I wanted to go back actually and watch the final quarter because I wanted to see the SMU comeback. But it looked exciting.
I only caught the highlights. I didn't see the game either. I was guess I was rooting for Nevada, but I guess it was it looked like a pretty good game, and it looked like Southern Methodist really had to fight to win it, from what I could tell anyway. I didn't see the game. Like I said, I saw the highlights. I didn't see the game. They had a strange thing. I think it was I don't know if you saw it or not. I think they had like a play where they reversed the call on it or something like that. I don't know if it impacted the game, but Nevada had to start from their own 2-yard line, which I thought was a little strange. But I don't know if you could help us on the rule on that. I don't know. It was kind of a strange play. Maybe you didn't catch
I
it.
did not see the play.
Well, no,
unfortunately.
called a fair, but how do you have a fair catch on a kickoff? I don't know. I mean, it might have been the right call. It probably was. He fumbled the ball and recovered his own fumble.
Oh,
He fumbled the
Well,
ball
that's
in the end zone. He fumbled the ball in the end zone, recovered his own, and then they wouldn't let him advance it. Is what it was. But so it impacted the way they had to play and so they ended up taking a safety. They ended up having to take a safety, so that meant they had to kick the ball off. It kind of changed the momentum of the game.
Okay, that's how they scored 16 in the fourth quarter. Got it. I thought they went for 2 twice, and that didn't make sense.
It made it to where Southern Methodist came within a point, and then they received the football, obviously on not a safety. Well, yeah, I guess it was a safety. They received the football and they were able to rally to win the game. Is basically what happened. But it kind of did change the momentum of the game. I don't know if you had a.
I'm going to have to watch that because what it sounds like is obviously in the last 5 years or so, they have changed the rules on the kickoffs where you can catch the ball inside the 25-yard line and it automatically gets advanced to the 25-yard line, which I believe is an archaic. It's a stupid rule that does not coincide and conform to the rules and the structure of the sport. But anyway, that aside, it's a stupid rule. And I understand it's for safety, but it's just a dumb rule because at no place in the rule book is there anything that lends itself to being able to artificially advance a football anywhere unless you're in the end zone. That's a different situation. That end zone has always been treated differently. So you catch the ball in the end zone, you advance it to the 20. There's a touchback in the end zone, or a ball gets kicked out of the back of the end zone after it's been possibly recovered by the defense. You know, you have those rules where you then advance the ball out, you decide possession, and it comes out to the 20. But this artificially catching the ball at the 2-yard line and it magically ends up at the 25 is the stupidest thing in the world. But that has nothing to do with what it partially has something to do with what you're talking about, because that's what the player apparently was attempting to do.
Well, no, from what I could tell, if he would have fielded it in the end zone, there's a chance he would have knelt, which would have put it at, I thought it was the 20. Maybe I'm wrong, but you said
it's
25.
The 25 now.
Okay. Well, anyway, I guess I'm wrong about that part, but anyway, in his attempt to field it, it went through his hands. Looked like it could have been, it was a fumble, I guess. I don't know. And anyway, he recovered it at his own 2. They whistled it dead. In fact, they all did. All the officials whistled it dead at the 2. But it was confusing to me because they said it was because he signaled for a fair catch. Well, I didn't even know you could signal for a fair catch in the.
Yes. So that's you're clarifying everything, Chris. So thank you for doing that. So you're giving me exactly what happened. First of all, it doesn't sound like it was a fumble. It was a muff.
Yeah.
There's a difference between a fumble and a muff. He did not secure the football and start to run with it. He muffed the kickoff.
Well, I've never seen a play like that where he couldn't. I mean, I would have thought he could have. It was, to me, I didn't understand it, but
not once it went into the end zone.
Well, he fielded it in the end zone, but he wasn't able to catch it. It went through his hands, and he recovered it at the 2, and they whistled it dead at the 2 when he recovered it.
Oh, because he recovered the football at the 2. Yeah, you cannot advance your own fumble.
Oh, you can't advance it. Okay, well that explains the rule then, because I assumed at the point he tried to advance it from that point, and they wouldn't let him.
And just in general, Chris, and thank you for bringing that to my attention, because I'm going to go back and watch that because I like to keep up on controversial or just rules that need to be clarified because they're rare that they're implemented. But just to clarify your viewing pleasure this season, yes, if a football is caught on the kickoff inside the 25, a player, this has been a rule for about 5 years, the player can catch the ball inside the 25-yard line, and it's automatically advanced to the 25-yard line. They are treating inside the 25-yard line like they did the end zone previously.
Well, I'm not familiar with the rule, Mark. I guess I'm showing my ignorance. But anyway, he tried to field it in the end zone. It went through his hands.
Well, that's why I'm explaining the rule to you.
He recovered it at the 2, and they wouldn't let him advance it beyond the 2. And then it resulted in a safety for Nevada, which meant that Southern Methodist got the football, and then they scored a touchdown within, like, I don't know how much time was left, but it pretty much gave them the win after they scored the touchdown. I mean, they had to score the touchdown, obviously, to win the game, but so it kind of changed the momentum of the game is what I'm trying to tell you. It kind of...
Well, sure it did.
Well, no, because it was after a touchdown that Southern Methodist had scored to come within 3. So then they got the safety to come within 1. Then they got the football. So now they're within 1, and they scored a touchdown. And they won the game.
Yeah, it was a huge play.
Well, one of several. But at any rate, Southern Methodist rallied to win is what I'm trying to tell you. They beat Nevada. They won.
Yeah, they basically did 2 things with that play. Number one, they were down by 3, correct? 24-21.
Yeah, before the safety.
So they didn't need to score a touchdown to win the game. They did score a touchdown to win the game, but they could have just kicked a field goal to win the game. Number one. Number two, obviously, anytime you get a safety, you are not only giving up 2 points, but you're giving up the football for the next possession.
The other thing they did was they scored a 2-point conversion to come within 3. So they really had to rally is what I'm trying to tell you. They really had to pull out all the stops.
Sure, and that's really the only part of the game that I saw was I was preparing to come on here, and I flipped it on, and it was 24-13. And yeah, I saw when you're up 24-13, 11-point lead with 6 minutes left, and you've got the other offense pinned inside roughly the 5-yard line, and that's where SMU started that drive about the 8-yard line. You're in good shape, but SMU drove it down the field, 92 yards, boom, touchdown, 2-point conversion, and suddenly you got a ball game. 4 minutes left, and it's 24-21.
Exactly. Then they got a safety.
Yeah, so I'll have to check that out.
No, it was a good game. There was one other thing I was going to ask you, if you don't mind.
And they were a 27-point underdog, by the way, Nevada, but of course they didn't pull off.
No, they didn't.
What would have been, I got a stat for you, Chris, what would have been the second upset of the day by more than double digits, and we only had 18 of those involving power conference teams last year.
I don't know if you got my text. If it's okay if you didn't. I've determined. Are you there?
Your text?
Yeah.
I didn't know my phone number was out there so readily.
We'll email text. Anyway.
Oh, okay. Email. Okay.
And I've already brought this to your attention, but it's possible you haven't read any about it, but I'm predicting there's going to be a little bit of an upheaval this year. And it's not to anybody's detriment. I just think every 20 years, there's like a new fresh face in the crowd. In 2004, if you want to look back, go ahead and look back on it if you don't want to. Utah was 12-0. They didn't win the
remember.
title. Okay, well, good. And 84, obviously BYU, but it wasn't just BYU. It was Florida and Washington. And then, what was it, 64? You had Arkansas. Guess who it was in 44, Mark?
1944. Somebody new to the national championship race?
I think so. It's your favorite team.
Well, they won a national championship in 40. I get this mixed up because there was a national championship in 42 or 44, and there was a Heisman at Ohio State in either 42 or 44, but I sometimes switch them.
Well, no, but that's kind of the point I'm trying to make.
Okay.
So in 44, it was Ohio State. 24, I'm not really sure. I think it was Notre Dame. And then 1904, it was Pennsylvania.
Yeah, 1904, I choose to kind of disregard that.
Why?
Because they weren't really playing football at that point, for one thing.
What was it if it wasn't football?
Well, it was basically a form of rugby.
Oh, okay. Well, at any rate, it was Pennsylvania in 1904. I couldn't find anybody besides Notre Dame in 24. I don't know if that was their first title, but so every 20 years, there's kind of an upheaval, Mark. A new fresh face comes along. Okay.
Every 20 years.
Yeah.
Did you leave out No, you got 04-24. Okay. All right. Who's he going to be this year?
I don't know. I'm just trying to get you prepared so you're not going to be in for a huge surprise. Oh, and then there was one other thing I was just going to let you know about. You know how you and I'm not trying to twist your arm necessarily, but you remember how you kind of said you didn't think that BYU could have beaten Florida?
No, I never said that.
Well, it doesn't matter to me, Mark. I'm just trying to.
No, I never
I don't know
said
if they
that.
could have. I don't know if it matters. I'm just trying to explain something to you. In the following year, after Tennessee beat Alabama head to head, and BYU lost to UTEP. But the interesting thing was, if there wasn't a belt, but if there had been a belt, it would have fallen right back onto Tennessee, which is kind of weird. But so losing to UTEP actually was kind of a demonstration of the capacity of the title to still stay in line. I don't know if it really matters. I thought you might be interested in that. I know you don't really like the belt, but it would have gone from UTEP to New Mexico to Utah to Colorado State to Miami to Tennessee.
Chris, for as much as I enjoy our conversations, and I truly
I don't know
do.
why you have such a problem with the belt. It works.
No. Can you let me finish my statement, please? For as much as I enjoy our conversations, we clearly have a miscommunication on a regular basis. I have never stated that I don't like the belt. I've even stated I like the belt. I think it's fun and all these other things. But to be clear, it doesn't matter.
Well, I don't know how you could say that. Colorado won a title with a belt.
They just happened to win a title with a belt. And I'm sure that if we went back to the NBC broadcast of that Orange Bowl, that what they were talking about and analyzing over the course of that post game after Colorado beat Notre Dame in the Orange Bowl was that they won the belt championship. I'm sure that that was at the forefront of the conversation by, I guess, Don Criqui and Bob Trumpy, probably doing the Orange Bowl in 1991.
Last time I talked to you, you told me that there's never any mention of the belt, and I watched the preseason between Sheamus. They had Sheamus on the preseason this season with the belt. So I don't know how you can tell me it doesn't matter.
Seriously. You understand when they have country music stars on College Game Day, they make correlations between gold and platinum records and college football awards.
Are you there?
I'm here.
Oh, I guess I just was going to tell you, I'm sorry. Sheamus was on the college football what do they call it?
I saw that. I had no idea who he was, but I saw that. I would have gone with Sheamus.
That's the belt.
That's another sport.
Well, yeah, but why would they be putting him on there if it doesn't matter?
Because that's his sport. They put comedians and country music stars on College Game Day. That doesn't mean that their awards are legitimate in college football.
Yeah, but they had him on there as like somebody to
as a prop, as a novelty, as a change up. They've been doing that for years to widen. Let me explain television and business, to widen the audience, to open it up beyond the college football fan. That's why they bring on comedians and country music singers that don't know anything about college football, just to have fun.
But he had the belt with him.
Who cares? What does?
Well,
yes.
All right.
Of course he did.
Michigan beat Washington, and that's the championship they won. Was the belt? Was when they beat Washington, they won the belt. That's what the title they won was, the belt. I mean, you can, if you don't believe me, you can look into it.
I believe you, Chris, because I would not spend more than a second looking it up. So I believe you. I am forced to believe you about all belt related situations.
No, I'm not forcing you into anything. I just thought it was interesting. They had Sheamus on to kick off the season, even. To kick off the season, the guy that won the belt is the kickoff on this.
Okay, you understand why he was the representative.
No.
Didn't have anything to do with the belt. It had to do with his, with his origin, his birth, where he lives, yes.
Oh, okay. Well, if you don't like the belt, don't use it. It's fine. But I just thought.
I love the belt.
No, you don't.
But it's fun, and it doesn't mean anything.
Well, I think it does, but that's fine. We don't have to agree on it. All right. Have a good day, Mark.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Disagree with what I have to say. That's fine. That's why we're here. I'm not right about everything. I'm wrong about some things, or most things are just debatable. That's all there is to it. But please, if you do anything, don't tell me things that I didn't say. Don't put words in my mouth. I never said I hated the belt. I said the belt was fun. It's frivolous. It's what I said. It doesn't matter. Those are two different things. I don't hate it. I also didn't say that BYU could not beat Florida. Little backstory here, folks. We go through disputed national championships here at the Voice of College Football. It's a great off-season project. We don't want to waste too much time on it because we're in a football season right now. But in the off-season, disputed national championships, we love to do it. There are a lot of wrongs that need to be righted across the history of college football. So I produced a video a long time ago about the 1984 season. And I just sorted out that BYU played an illegitimate schedule. I was not stripping a national championship away from BYU, but I was introducing other characters that Washington, Florida being two of them, that just as much deserved being awarded a national championship. And in the process, people asked me. I didn't make a claim of knowing what would have happened. Anybody who claims that they know what would have happened in a game that was never played, unless it's Alabama taking on the Citadel, which is obvious to all of us, a competitive football game, run away from that person's analysis immediately. Anybody who says they know what would have happened if 1997 Michigan and Nebraska would have played, they know. I get so many comments from dumb Michigan fans and less dumb Nebraska fans, just because we have less Nebraska fans watching us, that know what would have happened. No, you, sir, are a moron. You don't know what would have happened. You can have an opinion on what would have happened. I have an opinion on what would have happened, but you don't know what would have happened. So in this case, I am dissecting disputed national championship seasons. However, you find folks, and I appreciate it, wanted more than that. And you said, Mark, we want to know what you think what would have happened. So I clearly stated, I don't know what would have happened. However, I could make a prediction back in time of who I thought was better. And that's simply what I did in this case. And that's what Chris loves to call and get on me about. We do appreciate everyone here at the Voice of College Football, and we've got our buddy Christian in. And for some reason, again, these windows aren't popping up, but we believe that Christian's there. How you doing, sir?
Yeah, at least got the audio, right?
Yeah. I gonna mess around to see. Well,
There we go. I'm there.
crazy
I'm
about
there.
that. We'll do something like that. There we go. That one works. That was
What's
always
up, Mark?
automatic before. I don't know why it's not now.
Yeah.
Hey, Christian.
Yeah, I
How
don't
you doing?
know. I'm doing really good, Mark. College football has kicked off. Interesting game with Florida State and Georgia Tech. I think there's different ways you could look at it. I mean, Florida
Yeah.
State and DJ didn't really look too good, but I guess you credit Tech for the win. And we got SEC this week. We got all the other teams playing, of course. I really wanted to call in. I wanted to get more information. Do you have like a setup? I noticed you have tonight the first ever Alabama Crimson Tide live show for the Alabama channel. Do you have guests set in stone, or do you need some help? Because if you ever need me on, I could offer some insight if you want.
Oh, we want you to stop by. Absolutely. But that is out of my hands. I am not hosting the Alabama show. So that is not
Okay.
my baby. We've got our guy Jackson, and I apologize to our analyst. I apologize because I have not spoken with the gentleman, but he has quarterbacking experience at Delta State and some coaching experience and so forth. So Jackson was able to find a capable, competent analyst on the side to help us with Alabama football breakdown. And I watched some of their work together. And so, boom, I said, looks good. Let's go. And so that's Jackson. So, Christian, we will talk on the side and get you involved and
Yeah.
we will do that. How about that?
Well, I'll tell you this about Mondays, unless you guys change the day. But we're on hold right now. My men's Bible study's on hold at night. So, and I'm done with class by 2:30 Central. So I should have plenty of time, and I don't work on Mondays. So.
Well, Christian, I would say the thing that stands out to me there is I would love to come to your Bible study. I think it's a bit of a far trip for me, but I would love to come to your Bible study because
Hey,
there's
come hang out.
it's
Yeah.
nothing more important than getting together with some other guys and talking about God's word. That's it. That's a great thing right there. Love
Yeah,
to hear that.
absolutely. Yeah. But yeah, like I mentioned when I first got on here a few seconds ago, like it's game week for everybody else. And we could put that Florida State game behind us. We could laugh more if we want to. We'll see how they look a week from tonight when they play Boston College, I guess. But when you look at this week's schedule, we got a couple really good games with, I look at Clemson at Georgia. Of course, that's neutral site in Atlanta, Penn State, West Virginia. I don't know. Miami, Florida, I know people want to point and laugh at Florida and Billy Napier and stuff like that. I get it. But it is at the Swamp. And remind me, they last met week 0, 2019. Florida was able to win that game. Now, that was a different setup and coaching staff and everything, but I kind of want to dive into that game a little bit. Like, what would be the narrative if Florida is able to pull off a victory? Or is it going to be negative for Miami, or is it positive? Keep your eye on Florida, because I don't know anybody out there that's going to buy into Florida if they win this game. I think we would have to be on the side of this is tragic for Miami. What do you think?
Okay, so you bring up some good thoughts there, Christian, as you always do. And my thought here is that we need to separate what we expect the team to finish in terms of a record versus our respect for the team and the talent. So nobody's expecting Florida to do anything this season, correct? Well,
Correct.
what's that have to do with? The schedule. If you gave Florida Missouri's schedule or Texas's schedule, we'd suddenly say, well, we don't really think that the team's that good to really push for an SEC championship, of course, but we're suddenly looking at possible 8-4, 9-3 kind of finishes for Florida. So let's separate the difficulty in the schedule. That doesn't change how good this football team is lining up in week 1. That's going to just beat them down in November and give them what we're all expecting to be a pretty marginal to bad record. But those are two different things. This team that shows up in week 1, they are roughly as good as Miami is. There's not much talent or roster separation between these two teams. And Florida's got the advantage of obviously being at home in one of the better environments in college football, or one of the more difficult ones to play against. And then more so, what did we see last week? So if I could take the Florida State Georgia Tech game, and if anybody wants to go back and look at an old video, it's a couple days posted before the game. If I could be as right on every football game this season than I was Florida State and Georgia Tech, then sign me up, because everything I stated happened. And the one that I'll bring up is you got a marginal to okay quarterback in DJ Uiagalelei, and you've got a completely different set of receivers that he's never worked with in a game. And not only that, they're not experienced receivers, and I was expecting not much production there, and therefore we got not much production. Well, it's a little different of a situation with Cam Ward and these Miami receivers. They've proven something. Of course, Xavier Restrepo might be the best slot receiver in college football, and they've been working together the entire offseason. So I'm not expecting it to that degree, but it's still a first game experience of Cam Ward and these receivers together versus Graham Mertz and his receivers. Well, he's been in the system a full year and full season. So that could be an advantage in Florida's direction. I believe Miami's a better football team, but the better football team, especially when it's this close, doesn't necessarily win, especially when it's on the road and you're playing a team that might be sick of hearing how bad they're going to be and being kicked around on social media the entire off season.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know, man. There's so much narrative regarding both of these teams, and we're going to find out a lot in week 1. But, I don't think it's a defining game. Cuz here's how I view this game. If you look at Florida, if they pull an upset over 19 Miami at home, Miami comes in favored 2.5 points according to ESPN Bet. It's at the Swamp though. We're not going to jump on Florida and be like, oh man, they're back. They're doing something. Holy cow. You might have Florida fans that act like that. You might have maybe a little bit of the media. I guess it depends on margin of victory and how they actually look on field performance. But there's going to be a couple different ways you could view the game if Miami were to lose and it gets spoiled. Miami comes into the season. They didn't live up to expectation in a game that they probably should have won because Florida's down. So Miami's probably overrated going into it. Or Florida is back. Watch out for them. They're a good team. Those are going to be the two different narratives you could look at after this game if Florida pulls an upset. Now, if Miami goes in there and wins, no shock to anybody. I remind you, the AP polls out and everything. They're ranked number 19 right now. So they have a lot of hype and expectation. And this is a really historic game. If people don't know, I remember watching it in 2019 and hearing about the history of these two teams, and they've met on really numerous occasions. A lot's possible in this in-state affair, and I I would put my money on Miami right now, but at the same time, it shouldn't come as much of a surprise, I don't think, if Florida finds a way to do something about this game, especially it being at home. And what I say going into the season, Mark, is this. You could say whatever you want to about what's happened in the offseason, what they have coming back, what they looked like last year. If a team wants it bad enough, they'll go get it on the football field. And in week 1, week 0, whatever, at least to start out the season, don't count anybody out. What do you think?
Well, I'll say this too, that if you look at Billy Napier's 2 years at Florida and Mario Cristobal's 2 years at Miami, they inherited roughly the same type situations. They inherited teams and programs that had taken a hit. Obviously, there's usually a coaching change because there are issues and losing. But they took over top roughly 15 rosters in college football. And even though there's this optimism about Miami and they're on the upsurge, theoretically, it's all perception. They haven't done a thing. And it's all a low trajectory, downward spiral predicted for Florida. That's not been proven yet. It's about their schedule. And if you look at these two teams, who has played better in bigger games over the last 2 years? Who's played better against better opponents? Miami, let me give it a quick thought process because I'm thinking. The best team that they've beaten the last 2 years was Texas A&M. They beat Texas A&M. They did beat Clemson. Okay, they beat Clemson and Texas A&M. They beat two pretty good football teams last year. They also lost 6 games and lost to the likes and were taken to the wire by Virginia and so forth. Billy Napier, with all his issues and with all the negative forecasts for his team this year, they had Tennessee roll in there last year and they smacked them down by a couple scores. They beat Utah, a team that won the Pac-12 and went to the Rose Bowl the year before. So when they can get a team at home, again, this is if they were beaten down, let's say they started the season 3-5 and they were playing Miami in game number 9, I would have a different perception or thought process about Florida's chances. But this is fresh season. If Billy Napier has done a good job of shielding them as much as possible, not from social media because they're all on social media, but at least from the predictions that are out there and buying into that and just focus on week one. That's it. They have a fresh slate. They've got a clean slate. They're playing at home. And when you bring up a 2.5-point spread, you know what that is? It means that Miami is 55% probability to win this game, roughly. I don't know what the ESPN FPI is, but I bet it's roughly that. So it's not. And
actually, Mark, I'm going to let you in on this. The FBI right now actually gives Florida a 57.5% to win.
Look at that. Now, I've never been sold on the FPI, but that's a bit strange that it would go against Vegas. Now, you brought up about perception and what these teams' seasons would look like depending on the outcome of this game. Just think about, we just saw Florida State lose to Georgia Tech.
Right.
Let's say Clemson loses at noon by 14, 17 points to Georgia. And then Miami comes in and they lose to Florida.
That's 0-3 start for the ACC.
Well, it's not an 0-3
even though,
start.
well, no, one.
But
it'd be 1-3 because
but Georgia Tech's not expected to be a factor. And so, the look of the ACC is going to be horrendous, especially if Miami loses this game, because if things play out the way we expect, Miami's going to contend for an ACC championship. Florida is going to get dragged around the SEC, but they, in fact, may be a better team, or at least have won the matchup against Miami.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely on Miami. Like there's so many different ways I could go with this, and you probably have a couple more callers, so I'll make this quick. But I would say this to sum it up for this game, that there's a lot of pressure on both of these teams. There's a lot of pressure when you look at Miami, who their last 5 games last year, they had 2 of them that were close. Well, 3 of them, if you count the ball game against Rutgers last year, they were 1-score games. They blew out Boston College. They lost 20-6 NC State back on November 4th last year. And then you look at Florida, who just struggled to make a bowl game. They were 5-7, and they had a tough schedule, but they had some games like I mentioned that Arkansas game got out of hand in overtime. Missouri was a really good team. These are 2 teams that are, I don't want to say they're supposed to, but it's got to go up from here for both of these teams. And the fact that they're meeting week 1 this year, this week, is huge. And it's pivotal. It's a pivotal game for both of these programs, Mark.
Put it this way, Christian. We have a certain perception about Florida's season this year and Miami's. Miami,
right.
People are predicting them 11-1, 10-2, going to go to the playoff. I see all sorts of playoff predictions out of people, and that may happen. I doubt it, but I certainly was thinking about, they were my most difficult choice in terms of a conference championship. I almost picked them to win the ACC and go to the playoff. And then we've got this thought that Florida is going to win 4 games and Billy Napier is going to get fired. And he's a dead man walking, and this season's a disaster before they've ever stepped on the field. If we simply flipped their schedules and gave Florida Miami's schedule and gave Miami Florida's schedule, our perception of these 2 teams would be completely different. And they would be the same teams. They would just have different schedules.
Yeah, you still got all the players, you still got the coaches and everything. You just kind of, it's like they're switching conferences there a little bit. Like, are you talking, you give them the ACC for, give them the same, teams that Miami's playing, give them to Florida and so on?
What would we think about Miami's chances to do anything this year if their final month of the season they were playing Ole Miss, Georgia, LSU, Florida State, and I'm missing somebody else in there. They're playing 5 ridiculous games at the end of the year. And even before that, they've got Kentucky, Tennessee, UCF, Texas A&M.
They got to go to Texas November 9th if we're switching schedules here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So none of that matters. See, I think the public's perception is more about what we're expecting the final record to be than how good are these two teams right now, because it doesn't matter who they're playing in November. It only matters that they're lining up against each other at 3:30 Eastern time in Gainesville on Saturday. That's all that matters.
Absolutely. Mark, it was awesome talking to you this morning. Love what you guys do. And again, I'll keep in touch about trying to be on that Alabama show for you guys if you guys need some help. And I'm just excited college football's back. Looking forward to it. And for Alabama, let's take care of Western Kentucky this week. The Boer era starts now.
Thanks, Christian.
Thank you, Mark.
Good stuff out of Christian. Appreciate him stopping by. Let's keep it rolling here at the Voice of College Football. We've got one of our good friends of the show here. Our buddy Keith is stopping by. Keith, what's going on?
Hey, Mark, isn't college football fun?
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, I love that Florida State game. They came out, marched right down the field, looked like they were going to roll to their double-digit win. And Georgia Tech says, wait a minute, we're not done yet. And that was one of the best games I've seen in the last several years.
Really? I'm going to have to make your college football viewing schedule for you, Keith. just rely on me. I'll tell you what games to watch every Saturday. You can do better than it. It came down to the last play. It was intriguing, but if that game's played on a Saturday afternoon when everybody else is playing, it's a somewhat medium blip on the radar. Those games are played every week in college football.
That's true. I kind of like a game like that, though. I have really enjoyed the Bama game, Michigan's Bama game, much more than I did the Michigan-Washington game, even though they were winning the Natty against Washington. It was just fun to see that Bama-Michigan go back and forth like that. Is that all right?
Well, that's my point, that we can find a dozen to 20 games every week in college football that come down to the last 30 seconds.
Yeah. So that's good. Another thing I wanted to tell you was a good thought experiment would be maybe we can give Chris his belt championship if Ohio State beats Michigan in the national title game for the third time of the season, and Ohio State wins. They will have Chris's belt championship, and we'll all have to admit Chris is right.
Okay.
Just trying to have fun.
Well, yeah, we should get you on here with Chris, and you guys can, I can walk away for 20 minutes and you guys can discuss the belt. But yeah, you understand the premise behind the belt. It's like a heavyweight championship belt. Whoever, you could be the worst team in college football. And if you happen to play Michigan, Fresno State could be a week from now, Fresno State could be the belt champion.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't get it at first. I'm a little bit slow sometimes, but a couple of sessions ago with you and Chris, it kind of made sense to me finally that we're handing the belt from the person that has it. So now I get it. A little bit slow, but I got there. The final thing I want to say is I saw a film breakdown on Aiden Hutchinson at the Lions, and it was done by a guy in Chicago that I never heard of before, but very thoughtful guy. And he closed his presentation with a quote that I'm going to carry for a while. And it was, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. And then the next sentence is, but when talent works hard, everybody else is effed.
I would
Right?
agree.
Yeah. I think that's what we saw. That Florida State was a much more talented team in terms of on paper than Georgia Tech, but Georgia Tech worked hard and beat the talent.
Yeah, there's obviously that's a very general statement that little saying's going with, and I completely agree with it, but it's very nuanced. It should be nuanced beyond that. We're talking about the best college football players in the nation playing against each other, and that being the case, the FCS, the middle road FCS team, they can work all they want, and they're not going to beat Alabama, even if Alabama is yawning throughout the game. It's so there are extremes. That's within a limitation. Phenomenal talent is going to rip through a bunch of 2 and 3 stars that work hard like they're soft butter. So there are limitations upon that statement. But yes, it gives you a significant edge if you work hard and you are prepared versus just thinking you've got it made, you're ultra talented. Sure.
I can see that no matter how hard Akron and works, they're not going to beat Ohio State on Saturday. I can see that, but I think it's less nuanced than you're putting forward here, because we saw it twice last year in Michigan's playoff run, including I'm considering the game one of the playoff run too, because we don't get there if we don't beat you guys. So our 2-star team, hard work team, beat the 15 plus 5-stars of Ohio State and then Alabama on their way to the championship.
Keith, how many players did Michigan have drafted into the NFL?
13.
How many teams in college football had more drafted?
I think one in history, the 21 Bulldogs.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
None this college football season. Okay. So you're trying to sell me that Michigan was completely overmatched from a talent standpoint, but because of hard work, and we're assuming in that statement, unless I'm missing something, that Ohio State, they didn't work hard, and that's why Michigan beat Ohio State.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Oh, you were at the Ohio State practices. You're in the training facility. You're watching them lift weights, run, go to film sessions, and they just gave up, didn't care.
I don't know that, but how does 2 5-stars beat 16 or 17 5-stars? What other explanation is there?
Well, for one thing, the quarterback position is the most important position on the field. So it's not weighted evenly versus the others. It just is more important than having a good left guard. Now,
Absolutely.
I would argue that the entire offensive line unit may be more important than just the quarterback, but the quarterback is singularly more important. Now, it depends on your offense and how you run your team, because that varies. But for everybody, the quarterback is the most important position on the field. And so let's start right there. JJ McCarthy, better quarterback than Kyle McCord.
And better in that game. And better in that game. Yes, I give you that.
Okay.
Yep. And we can also say our offensive line was better than your offensive line, probably. Would
Yes,
you
let's
agree?
also understand, Keith, that as I look up the 2023 team total talent rankings, that let's look at this. So according to this, if I can find it.
Yeah,
Anyway,
you're right. You're right. FBI, I know what you're going to find already. At the end of the season, Michigan's FPI ranking was #1. But you know what they started
well,
out
of
the
course it
beginning of
was.
the
They
year?
won the national championship.
No, before we got into the playoffs, when we were going into the playoffs,
Yeah.
Michigan's FPI had climbed from 17th. It might have been 15th or 18th or something, but for some reason I remember 17th. We were relatively low in the FPI rankings, and Ohio State was #1 in FPI rankings at the beginning of the season last year. Do you remember that?
Not exactly, but that sounds right.
Right. And over the year, Michigan climbed so much in FPI, they were recognized as much more talented as they went through the season, that Michigan ended up #1 in FPI at the end of the year. And I think Ohio State fell to 2 or 3. But Ohio State was still up there. But you're right. At the end of the year, FPI recognized Michigan's talent. I'll give you that too.
No. And I'm not trying to discard what you just stated, but I just want to clarify it. The FPI is simply a reflection of results, regardless of what went into those results: hard work, talent, coaching, development, etc. The FPI is not measuring talent, it's measuring results. And at the beginning of the season, it has no results. So it is measuring talent to a large degree. But once the results start to come in, it is measured. You could theoretically have the 100th rated recruiting classes for 4 consecutive years. But if you go out and win all your games, the FBI is going to rank you #1 because you won all your games.
I see. Okay. See, I didn't realize that's how FPI ranked. I thought FPI looked at how many stars you had, what your measurables are, and I thought it was some scientific formula for that. But you're saying it's
It
results
does
based.
during the off season.
During the off
Lead
season.
into the season.
Okay. Okay.
So
See,
you
I
make
didn't
total
realize.
sense, Keith. Everything you say is right on. It makes total sense. Yes.
Yes. Okay. So yeah, we were recognized as more, or as more results, is what you're saying. Is
Yes.
that
When Texas was bringing in top 5 recruiting classes and going 5-7, 7-5, they weren't ranked in the top 5 in the FPI. They were ranked appropriately based on their results.
at the end of the season, but at the
Yeah.
beginning of the season they might have been higher?
Correct.
Okay.
Absolutely, they were.
Okay, yeah, you have a much more encyclopedic knowledge of football than I do, so that's why it's always good to talk to you.
Well, Keith, I appreciate you being here. I think you're slighting Ohio State's work ethic a bit, but that's fine.
Yeah, and I got to give you guys credit. Last year you put up a much better fight. 21 was embarrassing, but that 21 Ohio State offense was as embarrassing to you as it probably was to us.
The 21 Ohio State team was embarrassing to you?
The Ohio State defense in 21 was embarrassing. Yes, it was. I this might be a little bit harsh, but it's like if we were to beat Bowling Green by 21 points. You'd be kind of you walk away kind of embarrassed and say, but it wasn't much of a fight, there wasn't much of a fight there. I mean, we can't really feel that good about ourselves.
Physically up front, you are completely correct. But it was a 1-score game with like 3 minutes left in the game.
Yes. Yes, probably 6 or 7 minutes in the game, but about that, something like that. Yeah.
I think Ohio State scored with about 4 or 5 minutes left in the game to make it what was the final? 42-27 to make it 35-27. But yes, Michigan's offensive line and Hassan Haskins pushed Ohio State all over the field. Just like, I can't think of a game between two worthy opponents. I'm not talking about a group of 5 taking on one of the best teams in the country. I'm talking about, like talent and ability, where earlier in the season, Ohio State was completely ripped to shreds on the ground by Oregon. And that was a completely different situation. Ohio State's defense was duped in that game. Oregon was running plays that Ohio State was not prepared for. They had that left edge just sealed off, and Oregon's running backs were running for touchdowns, and you didn't even see an Ohio State player on the screen. Like, they were completely fooled by their rushing attack. The Michigan game was completely different. Ohio State's players were in position. They weren't fooled by these plays. They were just pushed down the field. They were just pushed 4 and 5 yards down the field practically every play. So yeah, it was a manhandling from a physical standpoint, absolutely. But what I find a bit amusing is that you're embarrassed for the as a Michigan fan, you're embarrassed for the Ohio State defense, not after you'd beaten them like 8 consecutive years, feeling sorry for them, but after they had beaten you like a drum for 8 consecutive years. You weren't just exhilarated, but you're thinking, man, that's embarrassing for Ohio State. After they had owned the series for 20 years. That's just kind of,
but
you
be
can
fair,
feel any way you want.
But be fair, isn't that what you were embarrassed by Michigan's effort for the 20 years leading up to 21?
I started to get there. Okay.
Yeah.
But you're talking about one after losing all those games and then you win one, being embarrassed for the opponent.
I'm just saying I was embarrassed for that defense. Your offense was mighty good that year with C.J. Stroud, right?
Oh, sure. They scored 48 points in the Rose Bowl. They finished number 6 in the country. They still, it worked out fairly, when you win a Rose Bowl, you're a pretty damn good football team, but not good enough. But I didn't start to become a smidge embarrassed or feeling bad for Michigan until like 2008, 9, 10, when the scores were 42-7, 37-7, and it had been 8 or 9 years in a row.
I was embarrassed every year after about the second or third loss. I was embarrassed ever since then.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, and that 21 offense, in fact, isn't that the year that you had 3 of the 5 top wide receiver speeds at the NFL draft? Wilson, was Olave in that one, and there was another one there, another big guy.
Yeah, I don't keep track of the combine speeds, but
no, that was the Haskins year. They had the 3 speedsters then. Yeah, okay. So I'm getting the years mixed up. Oh, that was when you beat us 42-20 or something in 18, I believe it was.
Oh.
Yeah, that's when you had that super receiver squad. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that was Dwayne Haskins and those guys. If you're talking about 18, then Justin Fields played only 1 game against Michigan, and that was 56-27 in 19.
In 19, yeah. Okay.
Ohio State's last win.
Yeah. So, yeah, those were embarrassing Michigan teams. I got to admit that we just have much going for us then. But yeah, it's always good to talk to you, Mark. I really enjoyed it. Like I say, I'm getting a lot of fun out of the college football season already, and week 1 hasn't hit yet.
Thank you, Keith. I appreciate you being here. Good to hear from you. Have a good day.
Okay, good. You too.
Look at Cheryl's on the line. Why cheat? Play the game. We appreciate Cheryl being here. Cheryl is an original here at the Voice of College Football. Now, unfortunately, we have already gone 16 minutes over, and we've got some callers on the line, but we've hit overtime, and we've gone into overtime. You got a lot of freebies out of me today. Unfortunately, man, I didn't get to anything close to what I was preparing to talk about today. We didn't quite make it, did we? wanted to go on my Florida State rant. I understand there are rants out there from all sorts of people, which is fun because Florida State has set itself up to be ridiculed. And since they were the only game in town, really the only game in town in week 0, people are having fun with Florida State. So we were going to have some fun with Florida State, but maybe we'll do that on Tuesday. We've got a great show lined up for Tuesday, but my apologies to the callers on the line, but we're already way over. And we are offering overtime each and every day here at the Voice of College Football. So this is going to be a 1-hour show guaranteed. If you would like it to be longer than that, hey, I'll sit here for 4, 5, 6 hours. It is up to you. So we appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. Again, we've got Alabama, Texas, Notre Dame, and USC shows today. So lock in here at the Voice of College Football. See you in a few hours. College football is even more exciting with some action on the line. And the games are even better when you're cashing in. And the Voice of College Football is the place to be to get the greatest value. Let's start with my picks. 75% against the money line, 58% against the spread. I've got a 40-year track record. In fact, in 2023, at $100 played per game, you would have netted over $9,300. And guess what? I'm just the warm-up act. Steve Merrill, our ace in the hole, show stopper from Wager Talk. 6 years with the Voice of College Football, over 30 years in the industry. Steve gives us analysis on all the big games, but you can't miss Steve's weekly under-the-radar pick, which went 21-5 against the spread the last 2 seasons. I repeat, 21-5 against the spread. You also get picks from some of our top analysts here at the Voice of College Football, including Steve Dace and Matt Zemek. Become a YouTube channel member or Patreon member for just $99 per month. Go to the main channel on YouTube, click join, and select the betting tier. Do the same thing on Patreon. Make 2024 a winner now.